What do you think of the recruiting aspect so far with what Oregon's been able to do in the Big?
Well, they were doing it before they joined the Big Ten. Like, I'll just say that, but it's certainly going to help. Like, Dan Lanning is just an expert at formulating a roster. Like, recruiting is one thing, and he's been really good at that. But what he's been able to maneuver in the transfer portal in his short time in Eugene, Oregon, it's a who's who. Some of these really impact players, like Tez Johnson is a transfer from Troy, I believe. Jordan Birch is a transfer. Of course, Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, like Bucky Irving transferred from Minnesota. And Dante Moore. We talk about Derek Hart. Like, there's transfers all over the place. So I think when you talk recruiting, a lot of people, we've been hearing that for our lifetime. We think high school recruiting, but you also got to talk about transfer recruiting. Oregon has been as good as anybody in the transfer portal. Now, when you hear that, when you hear they've been as good as anybody, you think a lot of these classes for some of these teams. They bring in 20 transfers. They bring in 30 transfers, right, coming into a team. But that's not how he approaches it. He approaches it with quality because he knows he has that foundation that you mentioned on recruiting. He brings in 4-star guys, 5-star guys, and he wants to be able to develop them, of course. But if they're not up to speed, he's going to go out and he's going to find somebody that's going to go win him a championship in the transfer portal. And it's just crazy to me. You mentioned the quarterback. You mentioned Dante Moore. Like, it was peak Dan Lanning to say, oh, yeah, we lost a Heisman finalist, but we're going to pick up a guy who was top 10 in the country in passing in almost every category in Dylan Gabriel. Oh, and we're going to bring Dante Moore as well. Like, that was... Yeah. I had a feeling that that's where Dante could go. I know he's from Michigan, so you thought, hey, Wolverines might need a quarterback. Michigan State was in on his recruitment as a high schooler as well. There was kind of some other ones thrown out there as well. But talking about Dante Moore, I think this is good for Dante, right? Especially what happened. He had some ups and downs. Injuries played a part of that at UCLA last year. But for him to sit and learn this offense, that's going to do him so many big time. It's going to do him a lot of favors. No question about that. But yeah.
Well, and some things people don't recall about Dante Moore was he was committed to Oregon.
Oh, for the longest time.
Then Bo Nix came back, and Dante wanted to play right away, I think, was more the thing. So he's like, okay, UCLA is open. Then he realized, oh, it ain't that easy.
Yeah, it's they threw him
some
into
of it's
the fire.
NIL, some of it was NIL, I'm sure.
They threw him in there right away, and that UCLA situation was very interesting because it was very clear I think early on when Dante Moore was able to tear it up in that game against Coastal Carolina early. It looked really good at the time for Bruin fans, but at the same time, now you look at it, hindsight is always 20/20, right? You look at it kind of in the rearview mirror, and you're kind of like, oh, that's almost the worst thing that could happen from a UCLA perspective, because he goes out there and he lights it up, and now that puts more pressure on Chip Kelly to get him in there sooner. And you could tell that when the competition got a little bit more stiff than Coastal Carolina, when you got into conference play, I'm not sure if he was ready. And then on the flip side, I'm not sure if this UCLA staff was the best staff there to be able to work through that adversity with him. What it screamed to me, it screamed a bag of cash near signing day with UCLA, to be perfectly frank with you, is why that flip was made. You look at where Oregon was as a program, okay, and you look like he would have been on this team last year with Bo Nix as the quarterback, and he probably would have been able to slide right in. A year of development, learning the offense, he would have been able to slide in instead of them going out and get Dylan Gabriel. And that seemed to be a perfect situation, right? Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you stick with that? And then UCLA kind of comes in, and they've been okay, 8 wins here, 9 wins. Chip's been doing all right over there at UCLA, but then they kind of come in at the last minute. It screamed NIL, it screamed fishy to me at the last minute. So it's but this could be, props to Oregon for not getting too hurt, for the kind of spurning them at the last minute. I think Dan Lanning said it, I believe it was on Adam Brenneman's show last year. He says there's no better time to finish second place in a recruiting battle than right now, right? And that's a lot. I'm a Wisconsin fan. Okay, there was a 4-star linebacker by the name of Tackett Curtis, played at USC last year. Wisconsin finished second. Okay, when he enters the portal after year one, he's coming to Wisconsin. So, just establishing and keeping those relationships very important when you talk about recruiting.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. Is like there was multiple scenarios or situations that made Dante Moore decommit, go to UCLA.
Right.
But Lanning and the staff keeping communication and going, hey, and then him kind of learning the hard way of going, you know what? Yeah, maybe I wasn't ready.
Yeah,
right.
He basically admitted that this summer and was saying, I made him basically said I made a mistake. And the best thing for me in creating my future and my legacy is to go sit somewhere and learn. And everybody's like, why would you do that? Why would you sit and learn? You've already been there and whatnot. Sometimes you got to learn the hard way and learn from the hard knocks and say, okay, let me take a step back and let me evaluate and learn and then go show what I got.
Right, exactly. So this is, if we get a couple of years down the road and Dante Moore is lighting it up, it's going to make for a great redemption story. And I think that's what Duck fans, of course, are hoping for. So yeah, it's boy, I tell you what, that quarterback, they got that thing locked up for a long time. If everything kind of goes to a T with Dylan Gabriel this year, maybe Dante Moore for 2 years, you got Achilles Smith Jr. In the bag for the 25 class, right? So I know transfer portal exists, right? I'm not gonna say I'm immune to that, and things could happen maybe with Achilles on the backside of this. But man, they could have their quarterback situation in theory locked up until like 2027, 2028, which is insane in today's day and age.
Yeah, and I mean even this season, you look at it, you got Dylan Gabriel. Very obviously, he can become the most experienced quarterback in all of college football, surpassing Bo Nix.
Yeah.
Then you've got Dante Moore behind him, who has experience. And then in the spring game, you got to see Novosad, who was a highly touted, he redshirted last year. Then you've got this guy, Moga, who really surprised me this last year with this spring game was running. He was like an RPO guy. And he was like a 3-star out of like Arizona, I believe, wasn't it, Spaz? I believe he's Arizona.
4-star Arizona, yeah.
And he's like the unknown. I don't think he'll get a shot, but I mean, the point is, the quarterback room is loaded, but that's it. You have Achilles Smith coming in next year, and then they're still recruiting quarterbacks.
Right.